My wife slept with the boss, suggested we end the marriage, and then changed her mind when I became infatuated with another woman. Hello everyone, I never thought I would come to this point, to the point where I seek guidance from strangers on the internet, but here we are. My wife and I have been together for 10 years, but have only been married for 8. We met in college and were each other's first and only. To be honest, I thought we had a unique and beautiful relationship, but it seems that was just wishful thinking on my part. Some time ago, my wife started working for a new company. At first, she had a hard time adjusting because she has always been very introverted, but with my encouragement, she made friends with a group of girls, some of whom were single, divorced, or dating, but not yet married at first. I was happy that she had made friends, but then she started going out for drinks, parties, or other things that her friends had planned. I was worried about her changing behavior and tried to talk to her about it, but at the same time I didn't want to restrict her in any way. This began to affect our relationship. In the bedroom, my wife is not a person who initiates intimacy, but as she continued to go out, she was either too tired or at some point not in the mood. A new manager came to her company, and my wife and her friends were also very interested in him, and she began to mention him in passing, but at some point she began to point out how he handled certain seemingly unremarkable issues. I questioned her about this person, and she ignored my concerns and even began to ask me if I regretted not having more experience with women. I said no because she was everything to me. I swear, for a moment, it seemed like I saw a flash of sadness in her eyes, but she quickly changed the subject and started mentioning open marriages as a way to spice up our marriage. I was taken aback because my wife was never like that and, to be honest, she wasn't the type of person with open-minded ideas. I initially refused and questioned whether it had anything to do with the new manager, which she denied, but said she felt like she was missing out on something but didn't want to lose me, so it was the safer option. I warned her that she was playing with fire, and then she reluctantly and naively agreed, so we set some rules, mainly not to have sex with other people at home. A year later, my wife started dating, having one-night stands, and then it seemed like I didn't see it happen. Somehow she was in a relationship with that manager, while on the other hand, I dated a few times but no one-night stands because I felt it was weird, and my wife would ask me if I was okay, but it wouldn't actually change her behavior. I feel like the love I had for her, the purity and specialness of the marriage has vanished and it is destroying me inside. I ended up dating an amazing woman who had immigrated from Korea. She had effortless conversation. She had wit that was lightning fast and a smile that made you forget yourself. This of course led to more dates until we became intimate. I honestly have never been happier than when I was with this woman. I never knew a woman could give so much and make someone feel so desired. At first, my wife thought it was cute, but as time went on, she began to question my relationship with my mistress. I immediately pointed out that it was her idea, and even her relationship with the manager worried me. She fell silent. She wanted to say something, but held back. She started coming home early, preparing dinner for me and cleaning the house extra well. She started bringing me lunch at work and making advances in the bedroom. To be honest, if she hadn't taken the initiative to open up our marriage, I would have been responsible for it too, and I would have jumped for joy at agreeing to all of it. Ibarelli gave in to her intimacy attempts, and when I did, it was only to end my wife's feelings disappearing too. I asked what had caused this change, and she replied that she wanted to show me that she loved me and was happy with me. I never thought of it, but I suddenly burst out laughing. I asked about her little group of friends, her manager, her lover, or her one-night stands. She didn't answer that day, just went to bed crying. The next day I came home and found her waiting for me. She told me she wanted to end the marriage, that this whole experience had been a terrible mistake, that she regretted everything and wanted us to be the center of each other's relationships again. I told her to be honest with me and tell me what had initially inspired all this. Guess what? It was a group of her friends who came up with the idea, as they got together a lot. When her manager came along, he was surprisingly supportive of this lifestyle and encouraged my wife to live freely. Apparently, it had developed into a relationship, but physical relations did not take place until after the marriage had broken down. As much as it would have been better, she describes herself as driving fast and recklessly, thrilling and intoxicating, but the price of this decision was too heavy for her. She now understands that she never needed to compare, that we were truly unique and special, but now she feels like she has ruined our marriage and any chance of a life together. I told her that I may never be able to see her as my wife again, and it broke her down in front of me. I quietly held her until she fell asleep in my arms on the sofa, crying. She then quit her job, cut off all contact with friends and her manager, and even told me she was willing to spend the rest of her life making amends, working like crazy just to earn my recognition as my wife. But I didn't cut off contact with my lover. Frankly, my lover makes me feel like I can take on the world like a man, which my wife never has. To be honest, I don't know what to do in this situation. I would love to get that special feeling back if possible, but my lover basically saved me when I was at my lowest. Please help me forget. One more thing, we have our first marriage counseling in a few hours. I don't know what to expect. Edited by W. I didn't expect such a response, and I really appreciate your support and advice. I will post updates on the therapy as it is frankly in itself a trade in itself, but I will answer some questions. My lover is not married, but she does practice open marriage. My intentions regarding marriage are unclear, mainly because I feel that although I love my wife, I cannot trust her yet. At the same time, since we have been together for many years, I find that I cannot really let go. The reason I agreed to counseling is to figure out if I am being rational about the problem and to stop being indecisive. At first, I did not ask her to hand over her phone because I did not want to see the real picture of my wife with another man. Imagining the images was bad enough, but seeing the real thing would have broken me, and I've already broken enough. I forgot to mention that this morning, when I came out of the shower, I saw my wife holding my phone and silently shaking as she read a message I'd received. I took the phone from her without saying a word. The message was from my lover and it said, "Good morning, handsome. I slept in your t-shirt last night because I didn't want to go to sleep and wake up not in your arms. I think it makes my wife sad because she's been following me for the past 2 hours, and even when I go jogging, she doesn't run with me once. Throughout our relationship, I met her one night when my wife was on a date. I was coming out of a bookstore where I spent most of my nights and where it all began. My lover was being followed by a short, stocky man who was shouting at her. When I saw him grab her by the arm and roughly turn her around, I instinctively walked in. I practiced judo, but it's not impressive. I was able to subdue him, but accidentally dislocated my wrist. As a result, she got him fired for harassing the seal, and he was very upset about it. Later, she insisted on buying me coffee to show her appreciation, and I agreed. As for her reaction to the open marriage, at first she was hesitant and firmly stated that she would not destroy other people's families. But when I described to her in detail what my wife had done, she basically stopped caring. I saw him grab her by the arm and turn her heart around, and I walked in. You have 2 choices. You can tell the story to your grandchildren, either that I saved your grandmother from the mafia, and she fell into my arms, or that your grandmother spent a year trying a bunch of crap, and I wiped it off and it was totally fine. Shoe update. A therapist seemed nice and experienced. She seemed unbiased and actually eager to help, even though this was our first meeting, and my wife took it as an opportunity to get it all off her chest. She seemed to acknowledge that this group of friends made her wonder if she had missed her chance, because she had been so single-mindedly in love with her first boyfriend that she had no other experiences and had never had the same adventures. Some of these so-called prominent women had gotten divorced, but no one was married. The therapist pointed out that this could and often did have a detrimental effect on a marriage due to differences in thinking. My wife seemed to agree with this and then added that after the new manager started approaching her, some of these friends encouraged her to see how things would develop, that this was an opportunity to explore and discover herself, and she felt so guilty about it that she said she never did anything physical until one of the divorcees suggested that an open marriage was a loophole and told her that some couples had become stronger as a result. So once again, with regret, she said, persuaded me to open marriage. Her so-called adventure began, which was intoxicating and blind, but lacked real substance. Unlike the kind we had built over the years, she began to question the reason she did it. She said she saw hurt in my eyes, but she told herself it was an adventure. She said she would never forgive herself. She stumbled upon a wonderful experience, until she noticed the change in me. That's when it became serious. At first, she thought that if I went on a date, I would gradually come to terms with my situation and be happy about it. But that all changed when my lover became a regular in my adventures. It became obvious that I was smiling for no reason, and when I received a text message, I left the room gleefully to answer it. She says she suddenly felt a sharp pain in her stomach and began having panic attacks for no reason. She sought advice from friends, but they said that it was normal for me to react this way during the adventure. But when the divorced man who had originally made the suggestion said that his lover made him happy, she finally realized that it was all true and that it was very likely that another woman, not his wife, had brought him happiness. This almost made her faint, and she realized how absurd it all was and begged them to help her win me back. But they just told her that if she couldn't accept it, why had she made her marriage public in the first place? She knew on the spot that these people were a toxic threat to our marriage and the life we had built, so she has been on a mission to win me back at all costs. On the other hand, I have not shared much, but I did let the counselor know what was going on my side of the equation, that my love still exists, and the counselor said that as long as my love is still there, no solution can be reached, and suggested we make an appointment again tomorrow. The counselor did say that it is unusual for someone to stay with their first love for so long, giving the impression that any storm can be weathered. I very much doubt she wants us to become one of her success stories. I'm sorry for the length of this letter, but I wanted to be as complete as possible. Edit, as I said, my lover makes me feel like a man. When I have had a difficult day, I am greeted not with indifference, but with a warm hug and a listening ear. When my insecurities flare up, she encourages me, saying that there is nothing I cannot achieve. This may sound a little sexist, so please forgive me. She gives me the space to be the man in the relationship. I mean, my lover believes that women do things that men cannot do. I think it has something to do with her cultural background, where she believes that men are not as caring and compassionate as women. So in her opinion, a gentle heart can calm an angry volcano. She believes that she should rule the bedroom and make it passionate, but never belittle me or infringe on my space in other ways. She believes that men have far fewer needs than women, so once these needs are met, men will basically fight for women. Now, I must add that she does believe in equal pay and mutual respect, but not to the extremes that some people do nowadays. As I said, this may be seen as sexist, but I think it is largely related to the culture she comes from. Edit. As I said, my lover makes me feel like a man. I think you're in the West, and in the West, the percentage of women who are willing to do this for you is very, very small. After years of dealing with another kind of person, so I know what I'm talking about, the kind of woman you're talking about is only 1% very sought after, and you've now successfully hooked one. Let's talk about your wife. She's a woman with everything, but in the end she let an outsider tell her that you should put aside the person who is passionate about you, your only person, and leave your holes for someone who doesn't care about you but definitely wants to F. It sounds like what you are doing to your wife and lover right now. Are you determined to be like your wife? You will accept a girl who is only obsessed with you and let her drive out and play, because you imagine what your wife used to be like. You will abandon the girl who loves you for a married person. Tick married between affairs. If you are determined to be like your wife, then stay with her no matter what. I warn you, your wife only wants you now because you seem like a good catch, because another girl wants to steal you away. But when you dump the Korean girl, this situation will not last long, and you will return to square one. By then, you will have lost your wife and the Korean girl, because a woman who can make a man feel manly is in short supply, and then you will come back here. Update 2. Thanks to everyone. I apologize to everyone that I cannot respond to individually, either through inbox or post, but in any case, this is the latest update so far. Thanks again for all your support. This is almost like a Jerry Springer show. I moved into my brother's apartment, which is very cheap. He owns property and could have let me stay for free, but I refused. These are just some of the things I found out about my wife's behavior and some disturbing things about her manager. During our second counseling session, I asked some of the same questions that the Redditors had asked. She looked at the ground and begged me not to make her say it. She said that if she said it, it would ruin us. But after some prodding, she shared that it wasn't physical, but they touched themselves in front of each other. The bastard convinced her that since it wasn't physical, in a way, it wasn't cheating, and they were simply enjoying each other's beauty. I was shocked. She started to tremble. Her breathing became rapid, and tears even flowed from her nostrils. She apologized to me. Even the counselor was surprised. Looking at my wife kneeling on the floor hugging my leg, she said she was very sorry. Then I asked her what had really changed her opinion of him, She said his attitude towards her had changed after she started to distance herself from the whole team. One night, she passed his office on her way out of a meeting and heard him talking about her with another male colleague. He said he was surprised to get her so easily and that she was living proof that you couldn't trust a man who kept quiet. When a colleague asked him if he really liked her, he replied that she was a pleasant distraction and that he had no intention of marrying her. He even added that it was just to get out of a difficult situation because the only woman who understood him was his fiancée, and he didn't want to break up with her. He also mentioned that he felt sorry for me, but if you snooze, you lose my wife. She betrayed me just for cheap thrills, which made her suffer the consequences in that moment. She said she left the workplace and vomited in the parking lot. She also added that her first thought was, "What have I done? What is my name? Please forgive me. I'm so sorry." Then I asked her if she loved him and when she stopped loving me. Workplace, vomiting in the parking lot. She added that her first thought was, "What have I done? My name. Please forgive me. I'm sorry." 3. Then I asked her if she loved him and when she stopped loving me. She looked me straight in the eye with tears in her eyes and said she had never stopped loving me. Honestly, this is even worse. He was just different. She thought it was love, but now realizes how stupid that is. She squeezed my arm with surprising strength and said she knows she messed up, but she misses our previous relationship. She even suggested we move away and start a new life. Just the two of us, like we were supposed to plan. Then I told her that it wasn't fair to my lover and that I needed time away from her to process it all. She broke down when she heard this and started sobbing incoherently. She clung to me as if I were going to disappear. It took some time for my counselor and I to calm her down, and the counselor managed to convince her that maybe a period of separation could help us heal. Now I wish I could end the update with that. But when we got home and I started packing, my wife received a video call on her laptop from an old friend of hers and she was crying. It turned out that after my wife resigned, this friend had started a relationship with the manager. But apparently she got pregnant, which basically turned him into Dr. Jackal. To make matters worse, she had a boyfriend with whom she could apparently see a future, and the only reason she even had an affair was because she was curious about the experience. Interestingly, this seems to be a trend, and her boyfriend discovered, as he found an email between the two discussing a potential pregnancy. But the manager basically accused her of tricking him into having a child, and of course he left her. She contacted me because she was under the impression that my wife had managed to save our marriage and was desperately seeking advice. I turned her away and have been living in the apartment ever since. Thanks again for your thoughts and helpful suggestions. Update. First of all, thank you to everyone who took the time to contact me. They shared some helpful advice, their own similar life stories, or just listened to me vent, which really meant a lot to me. Well, it's true, the friend who got pregnant did get pregnant, but losing her boyfriend and being humiliated by the whole thing caused her to miscarry. Time to contact me, and they have shared some helpful advice, their own similar life stories, or just listen to me vent, which really means a lot to me. Well, it's true that the pregnant friend was pregnant, but losing her boyfriend and being humiliated by the incident caused her to miscarry. She was basically furious and took full revenge on the manager, exposing him to all the senior management and his fiancée. I happened to find his fiancée on Facebook and was curious. This woman was basically a typical small-town girl. According to her profile, she was a special needs teacher who liked to stay at home and valued family very highly. My first thought was, what the hell is he doing? Fooling around with other women? When is he going to bring her home? To be honest, why a man like him would end up falling for a woman like her is one of life's great mysteries. My former friend had actually already made contact with me, wanting me to tell her what had happened because she was collecting evidence against him, but she wanted to get the story straight from the horse's mouth. She had already had a coronavirus test, as had I, and from the moment I saw her, I could tell she was heartbroken. The dark circles under her eyes and reddened irises clearly showed that she hadn't been sleeping well and was preoccupied with her thoughts. She thanked me for agreeing to meet her and immediately apologized for her role in my wife's adventure. As it turned out, she had been in contact with my wife again, and that's when she learned that I had moved out. Instead of blaming me, she wanted to take responsibility, which is why she wanted to meet me in person. I thanked her for her efforts, but asked her why she had gone to such lengths. She said that losing her child and the love of her life had changed her inside out, that she could barely look in the mirror because all she saw was her ex-husband's face. and that she could barely sleep because all she saw was her ex-husband's face. She told me that the closeness between colleagues was against the rules, not to mention the fact that he was in a position of influence and could well be fired or even blacklisted, but she could face the same fate, and she had accepted that. She left after hearing my story and apologized to me again. I needed to pick up a few things from the old place, so I chose a time when I thought my wife would not be home. Unfortunately, she was home, but to my surprise, she had placed most of our wedding photos and other photos on the coffee table. She stared at the photos until she noticed me. I could see that she was crying, and she wanted to hug me, but I gently pushed her aside. She wanted to invite me to lunch, but I told her I wasn't hungry and that I wouldn't be staying long. Just needed to prepare something. She said she had something to show me, and she pulled out her phone to show me a text she had received 2 days earlier from her former manager, reprimanding her. It had come from a new number because she had blocked his old one. Apparently, my wife had helped her former friend expose him to all the relevant parties. The relevant parties. He was furious. She said she got her inspiration from Lady Fool and Marriage Builders. She believes exposing the secrets will neutralize their influence and give us a fighting chance. I told her I was glad she had the courage to do it, but it won't change our relationship. I also told her I'd stop marriage counseling, but we do individual counseling. That made her sob, and she said she understood. I know I should either be furious at the action taken, as this has dragged on for so long, but I feel numb towards her, which is very unusual, which is why I wanted to address this in individual counseling rather than marriage counseling. At my brother's suggestion, I have also seen a divorce lawyer, just to be on the safe side. At the moment, I don't really want to fight for the marriage, and it seems that my wife could sense this before I left. She tried to initiate intimacy, but when I refused, she yelled at me, asking what my lover had done for me that she couldn't do. What had my lover given me that she couldn't do? She said in a loud voice that whatever I wanted, my wife would do. I shook my head and told her that if after all this she still couldn't do it, then it was clear that our marriage was over. At least for the time being, that's how I feel. Thanks again for all your help.